Let's get back to another international tragedy, though, and get back to the war in Ukraine. The country's interior minister and a child were among at least 14 people killed when a helicopter crashed into that kindergarten in Kiev over the last 24 hours. Here's the latest via Fox News in America.
There was no fighting reported in the area at that time, but Ukrainian officials say they haven't ruled out the possibility that Russia could have been involved. The crash comes as fighting is intensifying on the Eastern Front, with Russia making a big push to take the city of Bakhmut. But the West has been stepping up its aid, including new shipments of tanks and at least one new Patriot missile defense battery. Russian President Vladimir Putin calls that more proof the U.S. and its allies are fighting a proxy war in Ukraine.
Let's bring in Vasyl Myroshnychenko, Ukraine's ambassador to Australia. He joins us from Hobart tonight. Good to talk to you again, Ambassador. Tell us firstly about the latest information you've got on that helicopter crash. There's speculation as to whether there could have been sabotage or shot down or more likely an accident. Do you have any additional information on that?
Indeed, devastating news from Ukraine. Minister of Interior, First Deputy Minister and a State Secretary died in the crash, as well as the personnel of the Ministry of Internal Affairs. It crashed on a nursery, killing children and other innocent people. Many children are injured. It's really probably the worst time which it could have happened. Investigation is ongoing. We don't know the reason for that. Different possible scenarios could have happened. It's unknown at this stage, of course. But I knew two of the people personally, the First Deputy Minister, Yenin, as well as State Secretary Yuri Lukovich, who I've known previously. And they were a very young man. Yuri was 33. Eugene Yenin, he was just 43, basically. And young people, you know, the minister himself was probably one of the best ministers we've had of internal affairs. As you understand, as you probably know, that the ministry is very heavily involved in all the different security issues and actually is part of the war effort.
Yeah, what a tragedy. The important thing is that Ukraine gets enough military support to defend itself. As we speak, Ukrainian personnel are in the US learning how to use Patriot missile systems that the US will send to Ukraine. So that's important. But of course, Australian soldiers are now en route or arriving in the UK, where they'll train Ukrainian soldiers or would-be soldiers. Here's what our soldiers were told before they left for that mission.
What you're about to do is really going to matter for those Ukrainians who have given up their livelihoods, left their families to go and fight for their country, for their families and for their way of life.
Ambassador, tell us about this training, what it will mean to your country. Will this effectively turn civilians into soldiers?
Well, it's pretty much the case because currently, all those people who are fighting right now, they've recently been civilians, just like myself. I came here as an ambassador, but many of my friends who are lawyers, professionals, they've joined the armed forces and they've been fighting. And many of those people that will be trained in the UK, they were just like me. And that's a big, it's a big help for Ukraine to have Australians train them. And I think that will also help to create the bonds between Australians and Ukrainians. But look, our challenges are huge, and British government has taken leadership on training. And I'm very happy to see that Australia and New Zealand has been defense forces of those two countries have been helping Ukraine, and that will be a great contribution to our defense.
Very briefly, Ambassador, what would you say to Australians with memories of Vietnam, memories of Iraq, who are worried that getting involved in training is another step down the path to full engagement in Ukraine?
Well, there is no engagement in Ukraine, no foot on the ground. The training is happening in the UK, and that has nothing to do with the possible involvement of Australia. What we see right now, we see is our friends are stepping up their military assistance, with Canada procuring NASAMS, which is an air defense system for the US, for Ukraine. And also we see Patriots coming from the US.
And the tanks from the UK, indeed.
Tanks from the UK.
Yeah, indeed. Ambassador, thanks for joining us again.
Thanks for having me.